Author's Vlog Supplemental 4.25. Don't know how we're numbering these, but whatever. Today I want to talk about something that I really wanted to put early in the series, but we couldn't really find the right place for, so I'm going to talk about it today. And that's really why you as an author write. And it's not so much what drives you to write, but more of what are your goals? What do you want to accomplish in your writing? Not just making a good story, like we all want to do that. Who do you want to read your stuff? Do you want to be a New York Times bestseller, or are you writing more for yourself? We would all like to be here. We would all like to write something and have everybody on the planet love it. But that's really not how life works. There's things that everybody likes. There's writing to the largest audience available. Movies do this all the time, and sometimes it works, and sometimes we get Deadpool, and sometimes it doesn't, and we get Batman versus Superman. So there are tips and tricks. What we're really doing the entire series for is writing saleable fiction. Writing what most people want to read. New York bestsellers, these are your Stephen Kings, your Dan Browns, your Nora Roberts. Stephen King being the outlier in those. He's one of the odd ones. But when you look at Nora Roberts, Dan Brown, Nicholas Sparks, all of those kind of authors, they sort of have their own formula or rhythm that they use, and some are more formulaic than others. Most of this is what I call realistic fiction or contemporary fiction. It's not fantasy, it's not sci-fi. Most people, for whatever reason, like to read realistic fiction. When you get to the science fiction and the fantasy, you're more of over here. It's more niche, comparatively, but it's still nowhere near over here. But it still has a formula. One thing to think about when you think of formulas is not to think of it as a bad thing, because they really aren't. Baking cookies is a formula. You follow a recipe to make cookies. If you want chocolate chip cookies, you have to follow the recipe for chocolate chip cookies. If you do something else with it, it's not a chocolate chip cookie anymore. You've made something else. But the biggest issue with understanding the formula is when you first start to bake or cook, you need to follow a recipe, which is the formula. Because you don't yet know how all the ingredients work and what all the little techniques really entail, so you can't start swapping and substituting when you're just learning to cook, because you don't know enough about the ingredients to start doing that yet. That's kind of how we're gearing this, is we're really gearing this towards getting that first saleable book out, figuring it out, working through the formula to understand all the tools in the writer's toolbox so that you can effectively understand how to warp, twist, and change it to your own desires. But also understanding how you want to write depends on how closely you want to follow what we're saying, or how closely you want to look into the techniques and discussions that we have about writing. Because if you're writing for yourself or your closest friends, you can pretty much ignore 90% of what we say, because you're fine. If you want to write, say, your personal memoir, that's kind of over here. Those usually don't have a big market unless you're famous. Just FYI. But any of these, mysteries, romances, actually I think mysteries are over here, and that's science fiction fantasy, and all of their offshoots with urban fantasy, and I can't write upside down, and all of those little subgenres, they all have their own extra ingredients that go into it. So if this is your chocolate chip cookie, everybody loves chocolate chip cookies, those are the best, then this is like your sugar cookie and your peanut butter cookie. They're all cookies, but they're a little bit different. Each genre has the same kind of thing, the same basic recipe, you're just changing a few of the ingredients. Really stop and think about why you're writing. What are your goals? What would you be happy with? Because it's almost always a balance between what the masses want and then what you want as a writer. So, in summary, where do you want to be on this spectrum? What makes you comfortable? What would be the balance between your dreams and what you need in your reality? So take some time to think about that, because that'll really help refine how you're going to write and what you're going to focus on as a writer.